Good morning. So last night we had a memorial service for Gary's mum, Betty. And we had the service online. Because I can't get a internet connection up here in the Zendo, I transferred everything that was needed into the room that I call my office. And then various people connected via Messenger for this online service. And this, despite its limitations, it went really quite well. And it really was a joy to be able to offer this service to Gary and his brother and sister, and to have this service for Betty, who passed away now 50 days ago. It seems auspicious. Betty died on Bealtaine, first day of summer, May 1. And her memorial service, her 49-day memorial service, was last night, on the eve of the summer solstice. And this particular summer solstice seems even more auspicious than usual, because it's also a dark moon, or a new moon. And rarely do the two coincide. So it's quite a phenomenon. And who is it auspicious for? For Betty, for Gary and his brother and sister, for me, for the people who participated, or for the sun, moon, and earth. It's just an auspicious occasion to have this service, and it was uncontrived. We did not say, we'll do it on the eve of the summer solstice. There's a form where we do the memorial service 49 days after the person has died. It turns out that, as you may know, the summer solstice here in the northern hemisphere is the winter solstice in the southern hemisphere. So while we are enjoying the summer solstice they are enjoying their winter solstice. And while we are walking beneath a dark moon or a new moon, they are walking beneath a full moon. The story gets even better. As some of you may know, there is a solar eclipse tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning here, and our time, but it's in the southern hemisphere. That will be there tonight, I think. Or maybe it's there tomorrow night. So it's extremely rare for the solstice to coincide with a dark moon or a full moon. And maybe not that rare. I think maybe every 12 years or so. And if you can imagine being at the winter solstice, and then the short day gets even darker because of a solar eclipse. It really feels like a turning point. And that's pretty much what happens when a loved one passes away, when a loved one dies and becomes deceased. It feels like a turning point. Things will not be the same again. So quite often there's a group of people who follow solar eclipses. They jet set around the world to wherever the solar eclipse is going to be. But thanks to COVID-19, that is now not possible. And the only people in the southern hemisphere who will witness in the flesh the solar eclipse are the people beneath it. You won't get tourists, solar eclipse tourists coming in. Maybe from cars and traveling long distances by car, perhaps. But you won't get the usual fan club. Ancient civilizations sensed this turning point, based their calendars on the observations of the solar year and the lunar year. Built temples oriented towards these events, the solstices, the equinoxes. Live their lives more oriented or more in tune with the goings on of the heavens. And we still place tremendous importance on these observations. Around the globe, we have built telescopes of various kinds, radar telescopes, radio telescopes, mirror telescopes, optical telescopes. And to get a better view, a better picture, we've even built a telescope in space, orbiting the Earth, getting clearer pictures. But perhaps the sense of auspiciousness has evaporated. And what is that sense of auspiciousness? To me, it's just a sense that this would be a good time to do something. This would be a good occasion to have an event or to mark an event. This is a good time to mark the passage of time. To be aware and to remember change and impermanence. To observe the changes in nature. The ancient civilizations, especially when they started farming, needed to pay close attention to these timings because they represented changes in the season and indicated when to plant and when to harvest. There's a wonderful book that you may be interested in and you may not. It's called The Origin of Consciousness in the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. Author Julian Jaynes. It's a fascinating story as to how human consciousness evolved and a particular understanding of human consciousness. It's the human consciousness of narrative. That I can tell you what I am doing or what I have done, and also explain why I've done it. That I can tell you, and more importantly, myself, what is happening. This ability to narratize life. Apparently it wasn't always there, or at least not in its present acuity. And according to Jaynes, his thesis is that it evolved in response to a series of catastrophes. And because there was a series of catastrophes, particularly around the Mediterranean area. The ability to narrate what is going on meant that a response to what was going on could be faster. Instead of waiting for what was then more likely the right hemisphere to tell you what to do, or a message from the gods to tell you what to do, you would have within you your own ability to narrate and say, get away from here now. So animals will run away from danger, and humans would run away from danger. But there are ways in which you can run away from danger and ways in which you can cope with danger. And the ability to narrate, to see more clearly, to see with the left hemisphere what was going on, the left hemisphere of the mind. So this is what James is talking about, the breakdown of the bicameral mind. The ability to rationalize evolved and became more acute. I really wonder if we are the only species that has happened to. I was told, I think during the week, this week, maybe it was last week, that anthropologists are more or less agreed that the ape world, the world of apes, that apes are now entering into early Stone Age consciousness. Fascinating to observe. Their tool-making abilities are growing, and a growing sense of mastery, I suppose. But we don't have to worry about it. We're very far advanced, ahead of them, 200,000 years or more. More like 500,000 years. A long way before they start building cars and planes, and sailing boats, starships. If we could see the history of this planet, take a moon's eye view of it, to see how life comes and goes, how it evolves and becomes extinct. To see the waves of evolution and extinction. To see the similarities and differences between ice ages and hot house ages. can't help wondering if we are the only species that has come up with the idea of practice. Maybe practice is a response to the extreme of rationality. So here we are in the COVID-19 practice period, with its limitations and with its blessings, with its joys that some of us are experiencing. We're getting to re-experience our solitude, getting to reconnect with ourselves on a deeper level, getting to reconnect with nature, and getting to go deeper into our practice. And now I can feel the lifting of lockdown and the rising of energy as the world seems to be waking up again to what it was doing before this started. Circumstances shape our activity, and our activity shapes circumstances. But let's see if we can continue to practice steadily as the energy around us begins to build up and get back to something of what it used to be. Can we just remain steady in our practice? Or at least aspire to that. Make an effort towards that. And yes, if you get caught up in the energy, come back to that groundedness that you've been experiencing. There's a lot of suffering in the world. A lot of suffering inflicted by humans to humans. A lot of suffering inflicted by humans to animals. A lot of suffering in the world. How does that sit with you? And does that lead you to sit more or less? For I don't know, maybe it was less than a year, maybe it was about a year. And this came to a resolution maybe about 10 years ago. I had been asking myself, what is another name or another word for practice? You know, we say things like this: it's good for your practice. We talk about the practice. We give ourselves to the practice. And we can even say maybe what the practice is. Being present, the art of being present, returning to the presence of the present. Because as we sink into the present, or step into the present has a kind of presence. But I was keen to come up with some other word for practice. What is another word for practice? Or what is the practice? And after probing my mind for maybe a year on and off, not supremely consistent, but strongly enough, I remember I was in Belfast, and I think I was leading a short practice period, or I went there from time to time for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, one occasion 5 weeks. And so I would think of it as a practice period. And I remember going into the Zendo on one occasion, and as I took my seat, the answer came to me: love. The practice is love. Difficult to explain that. There's so many different takes on love. So many different kinds of love to be found in textbooks. Romantic love. I forget the other ones. Agrippa? No. The love for human beings. Agrippa or something. There's something about practice being love, or practice transforms our sense of dukkha and dissatisfaction into a love for life, an appreciation for life. When I was doing the dishes this morning, I was reminded and reconnected with this love for the dishes, for the pots and pans, for these objects that sustain our life, for the water and the sponge and the activity of cleaning these objects that allow us to cook and eat. This appreciation for the interrelatedness and interconnectedness of things. Another word for practice. What is the practice? Love. I suppose the next thing we could ask is, what is love? Practice. Was this search for another word because the word itself didn't quite complete the picture? There's something else going on, and the term practice didn't quite hit it. So I wanted something else. Love. Sangha quoted some Chinese teacher as saying, "I know that I shall love death because I have loved life." Can we love life in such a way that we will love our passing away? So somebody asked me a question during the week that got me thinking along these lines. It reminded me of this searching for another word for the practice. He said a friend of his, I don't know if it was her mother or father, passed away, and he went to the funeral, and he misses not being able to say, "You are in my prayers." And his question was, is there an equivalent in Buddhism to prayer? Or do we pray? So I told him this is a koan for him. Something that he can work with. Buddhists can pray. Probably we don't usually do it. And it's not part of being a Buddhist that you're not taught to pray. Not really taught to pray to Buddha to give you things, or to pray to bodhisattvas to give you things, or to do things for you, or to do things for other people. But you could do that. But it raises the question, what is prayer? I want something. I wish for something. I pray for something. They seem like different levels of becoming. Or different levels of relating. And the idea of saying to somebody who has lost a loved one, "You're in my prayers," that sounds very intimate. it's more intimate than saying, you are in my thoughts. What does it mean, and can we understand it in a way that has integrity for how we understand the world? So I thought about it now. I can't hit the nail on the head for, I don't know if I should say his name, but I can't hit the nail on the head for this practitioner. As I said, it's his koan. But I can maybe tap around with my hammer and maybe one of them will send the light on for him. As I thought about it, that's a really good question. What is another word for prayer? What is prayer? What would be my equivalent of saying, you are in my prayers? Meister Eckhart, I think it was, who said, there is no prayer as powerful as no prayer. Not to pray is the most powerful prayer. What is prayer? I think it was Kierkegaard who said, usually when somebody prays, it's to get something. But the real reason for prayer is not to change God, but to change the person who prays. We could say, you are in my practice. Or, you are in my vows. But that might sound a little bit strange to the person hearing it. What we're really trying to express is our sympathy, our condolences, and our sense of connection with the person who is grieving. And there's something wonderfully intimate about saying, you are in my prayers. There's also something wonderfully intimate about saying, you are in my vows, but that might sound a little bit pretentious. What do you pray for? Or is your relationship to life? Is your relationship to nature of the kind that we would say it's a prayer? My life is a prayer. My relationship to the wind, to the trees, to the rivers and mountains is a prayer. It reminds me of a wonderful poem by Patrick Kavanagh. He says, I turn the lee green down gaily now, and paint the meadow brown with my plough. Tranquility walks with me, and no care. Oh, the quiet ecstasy, like a prayer. The glossy flanks and manes outshone the flying splinters of the sun. The tranquil rhythm of that team was a slow-flowing meadow stream. I saw Phidias chisel there, ocean stallion, mountain mare, seeing with eyes the spirit unsealed, plough horses in a quiet field. I left out a verse. I find a star-lovely art in a dark sod, joy that is timeless, O heart that knows God. And you may ask, Mr. Kavanagh, and what God would that be? Would it be the God of Spinoza, or would it be the other God, the one who created all this stuff? We live our life as if it were a prayer. Whatever that means, there's something in it. There's something there. It's beckoning into a certain kind of relationship with the world as it is. It's entering into a certain kind of intimacy with things as it is. It's moving away from dukkha and moving towards that joy. I find a star-lovely art in a dark sod, joy that is timeless. And this brings me back to practice. There's a timeless joy that emerges in practice, or a deep appreciation for our life as it is, for the people who are in it, and for the objects that are in it, for they make our life what it is. But there is a lot of suffering in the world. Even if we are experiencing this timeless joy, there's a lot of suffering. And there may be something we can do about it, and there may not. We can certainly hear it. We can certainly be with Avalokiteshvara and hear the cries of the world. And we may also be like the 1,000-armed Avalokiteshvara with an implement to address each kind of suffering. And we may be like the Tara Bodhisattva, born of the tears of Avalokiteshvara. And Tara is stepping out into the world to help alleviate the suffering. This world is anguished, being exposed to contact. For no matter upon which it conceives its conceits of self, truth is always other than that which it conceives. The world, whose being is to become other, is exposed to becoming, is committed to becoming, relishes only becoming. Yet what it relishes brings fear, and what it fears is pain. And this noble life is lived for the complete ending of dukkha. I've been talking lately about the paramitas, 6 paramitas. And in that, I said, if I can remember correctly, that patience and energy could be subsumed into one paramita called becoming. Then I said that meditation could be called, the perfection of meditation could be called the perfection of being, and I said that being and becoming were synonymous. So patience, energy, and meditation are subsumed into the perfection of being. If we look at dana, giving, and generosity, it is our nature to give. So the perfection of being includes the perfection of giving, or vice versa. And the second one, ethics, is that ties in with how we act, how we operate in the world. And that activity needs patience and energy. So now we have dana, ethics, patience, energy, and meditation being subsumed into the one perfection, being. And I forget offhand how I tied in being with wisdom. But the perfection of wisdom is Avalokiteshvara. When practicing deeply the perfection of wisdom, clearly saw the emptiness of all 5 skandhas, and thus relieved all dukkha. Clearly seeing the emptiness of all 5 skandhas. That is the perfection of being, and it is the perfection of wisdom itself. So now we just have the perfection of being, or the perfection of wisdom. And of course, what this really amounts to is the perfection of practice. So we're practicing, and it seems a little bit rocky. It doesn't seem perfect. It doesn't seem complete. What is it that completes your practice or perfects your practice? That's all we have to give our attention to. Practice. As Kurosawa says in that wonderful movie, The Seven Samurai, I live to perfect my practice. How about I live to perfect the practice? And what is the practice? Love. And what does that do? It transforms my life into a prayer. Do I have magical powers? The saying goes, yes, I do. What are they? I chop wood and I carry water. Out of our practice with one another comes a great intimacy. An intimacy between each other and between our environment, between ourselves and the objects of our environment, between each individual and the reality in which they live. Out of our practice comes great intimacy. And that intimacy we can call love. We can call it intimacy. It's undescribable and it's wonderful. If it transforms your life, how will that change things? Will it change the way you relate to people, to yourself, and to the world? Or will it change the way you understand things? As you can tell, I'm here more to ask questions than to answer them. To give perhaps food for thought, food for practice, and hopefully to encourage you to continue with this wonderful practice in our very limited circumstances. We do this practice because everything is impermanent. We do this practice to appreciate our life. We do this practice to save all beings. Thank you very much.